Hello everyone, and welcome to Art Chat. I'm Margie Lee, and today we have come to Eagles Preserve to talk with photographer Les Davidson. Welcome, Les.
Thank you, Marge. Thank you for having this whole operation that you're in charge of.
Well, it's my pleasure. It's easy with artists like you.
It's a lot of work, though.
Well, we're standing in your beautiful apartment today, and I have to say it feels a little bit like an art gallery here. It's so wonderful. You filled it with your art, and most importantly, you filled it with your photography, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So I want to start with a wonderful image that's hanging in your bedroom. So
right.
Let's walk in there now and take a look. Lead the way. Thank you. And you know the one I want to talk about.
Well, this one's in the show.
It's wonderful. Talk to us about it. Where was it taken and how was it taken?
That was taken in New Mexico, and we had heard during dinner that there was going to be a snowfall that evening. And I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and when I saw the snow, I jumped into my car. I had a pair of topsiders on. I got over to this place, walked down a little embankment to the fence. The snow was now in my shoes, and it was rather chilly. And I set up the camera for the shot, waiting for the sun to come above the clouds so it would backlight all these bushes over here. The horse was not there. They came out of a barn way in the left and walked right up and stuck their nose into my camera. So I shooed them away. And one went back to the barn and the other one disappeared. So I was waiting for the shot for the sun to come, but this horse started to walk in. And I did not Photoshop him. I can prove it. I have 4 negatives, and he stopped in the perfect spot. He is backlit. He bent over to have a little snow, and that was the shot.
And it was meant to be. So talk to us now about this image right here.
Oh, wow.
This is not just any man. So tell us who this is and how this image came to be here.
Well, that is Ansel Adams. In 1983, I was lucky to become accepted to his workshop. And we did that, and I'm sitting here in his living room talking with him.
This is you,
That's me.
Ansel Adams.
And that's Ansel Adams. And then when that conversation was over, I walked out onto the beach, which was not too far from his home in Carmel, and I was photographing for the workshop program. I was leaning over a rock with a wide-angle lens, and I saw him coming towards me down the path with his hat and sunglasses and a cane. He walked right up to me. I stood up, and the first thing I said to myself was, "Don't let this pass you by. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing." I reached down and took my wide-angle lens off, reached into my bag, put another lens on, and I'm sure he knew exactly what I was doing. When I was all ready, I turned around and I pointed to the camera and I said, "Ansel, is it all right?" He said yes, and he took off his glasses. I raised the camera, and as I did, I saw to my horror that his whole face was a dark shadow. But as I raised the camera, he instantly turned his head like this, so the sun came across his face, and then I got the shot.
So he knew exactly what to do.
He knew exactly what to do with his head.
And he was a mentor of yours.
Oh, yeah. I sent him 2 photographs with a very nice letter thanking him. And when they came back, I thought that he would just say Ansel Adams on it. But to my joy, he signed it for Lester Davidson, Ansel Adams, Carmel, 9/10/83. And that is the greatest photographic joy of my life, I think.
It's a wonderful story. I want to go into the other room now and look at another work that's in the exhibition, Ageless Creativity.
Okay.
Let's go in there.
This was done on the dune field in Death Valley. You've got to get there early in the morning or you're going to miss it. So I got up before dark. I drove for about 15, 20 minutes, parked the car, and then you have to climb up the hill. And when you're climbing up a dune, you take one step up and you slide back two. You know what it's like. So you go very quickly to the top and you survey the image. As the sun just starts coming over the top of the mountain, every little grain of sand casts its own shadow, and that's when you've got to get the shot. You've got maybe a half an hour at the most to get the best photograph on a dune field. And that's what that is. All these beautiful shapes just come to life when you're that way.
What kind of camera were you using?
I was using a Hasselblad. And this one?
This one will be in the exhibition. This one,
Right.
talk to us about this one, because this one
This
has an Ansel Adams story.
This has an Ansel Adams story. I took these photographs to the workshop for critique, because we do a lot of critiquing at the workshop of your original images that before you got there. And Adams looked at these pictures and he said, very nicely done, very beautifully done. But he pointed to this when he said, this has got a real problem with it. I looked at it, I looked back at him and I said, Ansel, what is the problem? He said, the problem is that I didn't take it. He said, you have accomplished something that is very rare. A lot of people don't know what the zone system is, but very quickly, the zone system, which he invented, is in your picture. How many of these zones are in your photograph? From pure black, pure white, and 5 different shades of gray. He says you've done that with pure black and pure white, light gray, medium gray, darker and darker and darker, darker gray. You've got all 7 zones in one photograph. That is a wonderful feat.
And it has your name on it, not Ansel Adams. Congratulations. Well, now that we've seen this wonderful work, let's take a look at the one right behind us. Where was this taken?
Well, we were driving down the coast of Oregon, and this caught my eye. It wasn't too far from the road. That's Cannon Beach. And I took one look at that, and I said, that is so typical of the Oregon coast. You could just feel the chill in your bones, which you would have if you walked out there. Nobody goes down to the beach. And it's got all these light gray colors going all the way into the dark. Again, the zone system comes into play. And it was a very easy image to capture all the zones in that image.
You framed it very unusually. This is it's divided with the framing. It's very interesting.
I didn't have a big enough printer to make it this big, so I did 2 sections, and that's how we got a diptych.
That was ingenious.
We got it done, though. All right.
Well, and speaking of ingenious, I want to go now to the last work. This is one of your masterpieces. It's in the exhibition, Ageless Creativity. And when we look at that work, you're going to be telling us about the process called multiple imaging. Well, here we are at this wonderful work. First of all, this is an example of multiple imaging. Talk to us about what multiple imaging is. What does that word mean?
Well, you start with a background image, and you let your imagination run wild and decide what can I put into it to make it a little more interesting, shows a little bit more of my feeling about it, and maybe I could pass something on to the viewer a little different than an ordinary image. This image was taken before it was manipulated in Canyon de Chelly, Arizona. And maybe you noticed both these 2 sides are the same. The actual image was half of this without any of this in. The horses were there, and this was just a half of a rock and a shadow was being cast on that rock. So I looked at that, and the rock, this part of it looked kind of interesting. So I sliced it in half in the computer. I flipped over one side and joined the two same sides. And much to my delight, it came up with this wonderful shape that looked like a temple. And so I looked at it. The horses, I said, were there. There was a white horse over here that I took out so it wouldn't be a dead giveaway. And then I said, I need a door. What am I going to do for a door? So I went through probably 200 photographs taken in Europe of ancient doorways, and I put them in here one at a time, and nothing worked. Finally, I got to pictures taken in Spain, and the Alcazar in Seville, Spain, used to be Islamic because Islam ruled Spain a couple of hundred or so years ago. And I came across this beautiful gate-like structure. It's pure Islamic architecture. I took it and I put it in, and I said, well, we've got a problem. This is a doorway, actually, that opens up. And on the other side, this is all glass. There are people walking, there are trees, and there are buildings. So I had to spend the next 2 days enlarging this image in the computer and erasing in every little spot that's in this picture. I had to erase what was on the other side of it until it was pure white.
That's amazing.
That was about 2 days of work, 5 hours each day.
That's amazing. So you're doing this on a program called Photoshop, is that correct?
That was doing it with Photoshop on a computer, very enlarged, with an eraser. And then when I went over, my hand wasn't that steady, I would paint the black back in, whatever it was. It was very time consuming, but the rest of the image came together very nicely. And when I finished it, I loved it. I put it in a show at the Von Liebig Art Center in Naples and sold several of them, and they wanted one for their permanent collection, so I donated it to them. And they show it around in Naples every couple of years. And that's the history of this piece.
Well,
It is my favorite multiple image. I've done many more since.
and you studied from a master of multiple images.
Jerry Uelsman, I first saw a piece of his work in a magazine in 1969, in Photography magazine, and he had one picture in there, no one even knew who he was. And I followed him, and I met him at a show in Coral Gables, one of his first shows. I walked in and I saw his work, and it just blew my mind, and I said, this is the way I have to go. And I introduced myself to him. He was sitting on a chair outside, leaning against the building with the chair ready to fall apart, and his wife and a little baby in a carriage there. And I said, Jerry, how do you get the inspiration for this type of work? So he looked at me with a smile and he said, it's very helpful if you're a little crazy.
Well, that's a wonderful way to end our segment. I don't think you're crazy at all.
Actually, he is a very intellectual man and a very, very, very wonderful sense of humor. I did 2 workshops with him where he showed me how to do it in the darkroom, and to this day, he only does all his complex work in the darkroom. He is a total master of darkroom procedure. I found it after a while very, very difficult to do, very time consuming. And then when Photoshop came out, I gravitated to that.
Well, you've done a wonderful job, and I want to thank you for being on Art Chat today. And I want to invite all of our viewers, if you want to see this wonderful work up close, please attend the exhibition, Ageless Creativity. It will open at the Sidney and Byrne Davis Art Center on February 3rd. And a shout out to our friends at Fine Mart Bank for sponsoring that. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.